Hello lovelies, today we're taking a look at Broken Shores, Brutal Survival in a Drowned World by Black Oath and good old Alex T, this being another one of many books he sent me for free, so if that you think that factors in my review, now you know. Disclosure is important. I like islands, I like Earthsea, I like the Greek voyage myths, I like the Shatterlands that I created in Tabletop+, I like Pirates of Darkwater, Glorantha's Eastern Isles, the Islands of the Hours in Abarat, the Far Isles of Gore, and in science fiction I love Belters, the Orc Cloud, Junk Rings, and so on. Maybe it's the Islander in me, living in the British Isles. Maybe it's the early influence of Earthsea in particular, but I think islands make for great self-contained stories in their own little geographical bubbles. In this case, we have an RPG, primarily meant to be played one-on-one, but it has tools for single-player play as well. You are a survivor in a flooded world after a war amongst the gods seems to have both wiped out the gods and visited terrible ruin on the world beneath them. Only fragments of land remain or are re-emerging now, and you're put in the position of escaping from some slavers and trying to find a way to survive, thrive, and unlock the mysteries of this drowned and ruined world. It's a percentile system, translated from familiar OSR/D&D roots, maybe a touch more RuneQuest than other games of this ilk, but familiar enough and easy enough to convert back and forth should you so wish. Basically 5% is 1 point on a d20. With such a fragmented and indeterminate world setting, as yet unmapped, though there is background lore, you're kind of free to define your own world here, island by island, guided by the various tables and so on that are found within, and either your own whims or those of your games master, should you choose to have one run the game for you. Now I've found a way to somewhat enjoy single player games myself, but I don't think they're for everyone. What I have done is taken what's happened in the game, then turned it into a story, something a bit closer to how a normal role-playing session is, but post hoc. And then I have presented it to you, dear viewers, on my channel. Thousand Dead Worlds, 3rd episode coming soon. It's hard to find time for it. But even that way of playing is still somewhat unsatisfying to me. It lacks immersion because you're always kind of post hoc describing things and post hoc understanding things. All the creative artistry comes after, not in the moment. So it's very hard to inhabit a character, I find, when playing single player. And a part of the way I've come to reconcile single player RPGs is as games master practice. Right, it makes for a good games master training tool. That's another use for single player games, but even that is somewhat unsatisfying because it is the interplay between two different minds and two different conceptions of the game world that I think makes things engaging and interesting, and you can't necessarily trust your own decisions as well. As single player games go, this is a relatively concise game. The nature of islands and so on also lends itself well to this type of game, and so I think this is a decent intro product to the world of solo gaming. It's a lot more straightforward than a lot of other ones, and as I say, I think the nature of the setting lends itself to that sort of game. Quick tip: If you need random words for something, there's a website called randomwordgenerator.com, which is great for that, and will give you a much wider spread of words and options than any table could ever have in any book. Right, you can even set parameters for the types of words, adjectives, verbs, whatever, and you can limit or increase the size of words if you are a bear of limited vocabulary. If you want a random island generator, Red Blob Games have one. It doesn't have a nice, convenient, easily said web address, but if you search random island generator Red Blob Games, that should turn up. You can set the size to tiny, and you can throw up random hex maps of islands to your heart's content as fast as you can press the arrow key. So yeah, that's something. The art in this book has that black and white heavy metal aesthetic that we've become familiar with in recent years, but with the inclusion of topics like seduction, cannibalism, and so on. Broken Shores puts its money where its mouth is. It's Broken Shores, not Borken Shores, even if you mistype it. Style-wise, then, I give the game a 4. In an age of full colour, muddy, low-contrast artwork, I've grown to appreciate the starkness of black and white, the visibly arresting nature of good black and white art, in comics as well, to be honest. Some of the pieces are stock art that you might be familiar with, and that's just a little bit out of place with the style of the rest of the book, and the quality is quite variable, but overall it's a fine effort on the art. The layout is pretty basic and standard, but that's also what makes it readable and somewhat easy to reference. This isn't art punk. Using justified text isn't something I normally prefer to do. I like my ragged edges, thanks. And justified text can lead to some janky paragraphs. Now, normally I would let that slide, but in this smaller booklet with consequentially narrower columns, that jank becomes far more visually apparent and arresting where it takes place. So, if that bothers you, it bothers you. If it doesn't, it doesn't. In terms of substance, this is an A5, roughly, booklet. It's about 130 pages, but it does contain everything you need. But I have wants as well as needs, and a creature generator such as that found in 1,000 Dead Worlds would have been nice, or a larger bestiary would have been lovely to have, as would a couple of sample maps, a couple of pre-generated regions would have been nice to have. These are a bit niggling in terms of criticisms, however, though more examples in the text would also have been nice to have. I'd give it a high 3 for substance. So that's 4 for style, 3 for substance. That's 7 out of 10, 3.5 out of 5. Quick reminder, I use the full spread 1 to 10 when I review things. So a 3 in style or substance is average, which is a perfectly cromulent score. Anything over that is above average. So 7 out of 10 is pretty good. If you like single player games, you can probably tack another half point onto that. And if you're looking for an introductory single player game, this is a good bet. So I'm also going to offer my unsolicited advice on what would make things better when I review things from now on, at least when I remember to do so. The main thing here is that better bestiary or a creature generation system. Part of my fascination with the sea and island life was always watching underwater footage and seeing all the strange and wonderful creatures that exist beneath the waves. I used to love dipping around in rock pools on the Cornish and Devonshire coast, and while there's a few things in here, it does feel a little bit scant. Otherwise, there's things I've already mentioned, and the art being more consistently on style would really have elevated the work. And it's not necessarily all particularly evocative of the island and see life necessarily. The tables could be a little bit more characterful. That is something I notice in a lot of single player RPGs. There's a lot of tables, but there's not a great deal of effort to make the tables look part of the setting. They're very, eyes glaze over, all presented the same sort of way. Of course, there's reasons for that. You have to keep them readable, but that's the challenge, and it's what I face in my own work. But yeah, that'll do, pig. Zang. About 3,000 of you subscribe, but only about 200 are getting notifications, so click the bell and click all.